Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my first impressions reaction to the first episode, obviously, of Revolutionary Girl Utena. So, this is also doubling as part of Pride Month because this series is honestly one of the biggest beacons of queer representation in anime. And for a long time, this came out in the late 90s. For a long time, this was one of the only really big, really notable representations. And it's like there were plenty of examples of shows that came before this in the early 90s or even 80s that had queer characters in it. But a lot of the times they weren't notable characters, they weren't main characters, they weren't focused on. And sometimes they were even not written well at all. But people usually look to this as kind of just this big trailblazer for that in anime. A lot of people also say it's just really damn good. That it's tightly written, has likable characters, and a really interesting plot. Now, I don't know much about this series. I know, like, kind of bare bones basics about it. From what I know, and I might even be wrong on this, it's basically just what I've heard in kind of passing. um, but it takes place in a world, in a time, whatever, where like the concept of gender isn't quite the same as we think of it. It's more fluid, it's much more just kind of like passed off to the side, I guess you could say. um and the main character, Utena, wants to become a prince, and along the way forms a romantic relationship with this girl named Anthe. And that's pretty much all I know. Like I said, it's a very bare bones basics. It's like a just super general synopsis kind of knowledge. And I don't even know how accurate it is. Because, yeah, it's just hard to say when all you've heard of the series has been literally in passing. I think it might have been at Youmacon or something. Just I heard someone talking about it. um, but yeah, I've heard a lot of praise for this series, and I've wanted to check it out for a while. I just never really got the chance, and even with reactions, I never really found the opportunity, the right time to put it into a slot. Especially with other stuff I wanted to get to, like first, other stuff, like more modern stuff even. Um, but now that we're doing these first impressions reviews or reactions, I feel like, yeah, it's a good time to check this out. So, since this is a first impressions reaction, um, here's how this goes. For those who might not know, since this is a brand new concept on the channel and everything, we are going to react to the first episode today. That's it, just the first episode. This does not mean it is going to be a recurring reaction series on the channel. It could be, it could not be. It's going to depend on a few factors. Obviously, what I think of this first episode is a big one. But it's also going to depend on whether or not I think this is going to be a series that will work for reactions. Because you can see a series and it could even be good and enjoyable, but it might not be good for reactions per se. There might not be a lot to like specifically react to. You know what I mean? And various other things here and there would determine it as well. Um, but I'm definitely interested in checking this out. And if it does end up being pretty damn good, and I do feel it'd be good for reactions, and I do want to react to it rather than watch it on my own time, we'll bring it into the fold at some point. Because that's how these first impressions reactions are going to go. If I like it and decide I would like to continue to react to this at some point, it'll basically just be put on my list to be added to a slot at some time in the future. Um, Otherwise, it's just going to be either watched on my own time or just not continued, pretty much. Um, so yeah. Without knowing too much about this, I am definitely still interested, and I really am excited to see what all the hype about this series is about. I doubt we're gonna get too much in episode one. Probably just introductions to everything and everyone. Um, but still, I'm hoping that it really gives us a good kickoff that makes me interested in continuing. Um, and as for its age, being from 97, I believe it is, that isn't going to really be that much of a determining factor at all. Because it's like right now, I'm currently rewatching through Yu Hakusho along with the SOS Bros on their channel. And I love Yu Yu Hakusho, and it still holds up. And actually, I believe that's older. I believe that's from the early 90s, if I remember right. Um, but either way, it's either older or at least around the same time that the anime came out. So, and I've seen plenty of older anime than that from the 80s and stuff too. So it doesn't matter to me on that. But anyways, we're just going to get into this and hope for the best with this first episode of Revolutionary Girl Utena. Um, and is it Utena or is it Utna? I've heard it pronounced like all kinds of ways, but those tend to be the most common that I've heard: Utena and Utna. And it's like it's. I don't think it's really that big of a deal. Um, but I don't know. I'm probably gonna mostly pronounce it Utena. Also, we are watching the sub. There is a dub for this, but I have chosen to watch the sub for this one. Um, I don't know. Just from the very little I know about this series, I just feel like I'd rather see it as envisioned, especially because it is such a queer beacon of a series. And I feel like the dub might have changed some of that because, older anime tended to change quite a bit in dubs. And some modern anime even do that still. But I'm just I'm worried that the dub for this series would cut out a lot in that regard. So we're going with the sub. Anyways, we're just gonna get this started though. Enough lollygagging around. So let's begin. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So first off, something at the end of the episode there kind of confused me a little bit. The one guy mentioned that he thought that Utena was like from the middle school and everything. And I'm like, wait, I mean, she's not like 16, 17 years old. Like, yeah, obviously they're school age, but I was thinking like she was an older teenager. And I guess same with Anthony and the others as well. I looked it up. They're 14. And it's like, okay, just anime logic. Because they look like they'd be 17. Or at the youngest 16. And again, this is a thing that a lot of anime have done. Bleach does it. Like, Ichigo doesn't look like, what, he's 15, 14 or 15? He doesn't look like it. Um, it's an anime thing. It's just the art style and everything. They make the characters look a lot older than they are sometimes, or even a lot younger than they actually are in a lot of anime. And most of the time I can forgive it. There's only a few exceptions where it's really actually bothered me. Um, but so I have no issue with it here. It's just it kind of surprised me. Um, so the big question I bet that kind of needs to be answered first is, do I plan on continuing this in the future at some point as a reaction series, or do I choose instead to watch it on my own time? Or will I just not continue it? Yeah, I can pretty confidently say I want to react to this for a number of reasons. It's genuinely interesting and entertaining. Like, without question, I was enjoying watching it. Even outside of the progressive stuff, which I'll talk about. The just general interaction between characters, the pacing, the comedic faces and everything, and even the kind of mysterious depth of the plot makes me want to know more and see more. It hooked me in, which is what a first episode of any show should do. Not every show does it, but every show should do it. Um, and I understand a lot of that is like a person by person thing. It's like some things will hook some people in while they won't hook others in and stuff. But for me, this definitely hooked me in. I'm definitely already invested in these characters, and I already enjoy what we've gotten of this story. Um, Another reason is the obvious one, the queer representation and just general progressiveness of all of this. Um, it's made very apparent in this first episode the kind of things that they're trying to say with all of that, but it never beats it over your head. It's I wouldn't say subtle about it, because it's not really subtle. It's very obvious, but it's not something that they take and just like throw at you constantly. It's just how this world is, how this country or wherever they're at functions. And especially with our main character, Utena. Utena is a 14-year-old girl who doesn't really care what others think about her. And she wants to just do what she wants to do. She wants to live the way she wants to live. She wants to dress the way she wants to dress. She wants to play basketball. And she wants to be a prince who can save a princess. And while her teacher may not be living in the present, I guess you could say, um, it seems like most other characters are fine with this. No one really seems to have an issue with the idea of her being a prince. Um, or again, even the fact that the one girl called Utena at the beginning her boyfriend, and the others didn't really bat an eye. The only thing they really made fun of was like, oh, well, she left this morning and stuff. Like, that's the only issue that ever came up with that. And even when she said to others that she wants to become a prince, like to Sionji, he didn't seem to care about that. Like, that didn't matter to him. His issue was with that he was being challenged. um, but it's very, very clear that this is just accepted. And I like that. Because honestly, a lot of us wish that it was that way in real life, to where queer relationships and genders and whatnot were just readily accepted without having to explain or without having to like have specific labels and whatnot. A lot of us just wish it were that integrated into society, just that normal. Unfortunately, it's not as accepted as it should be in real life. But it's still fun to see this kind of like fantasy world where it is. um so plot wise, this seems to be at some kind of like school. Um but at the same time, there's also something going on behind the scenes with this Rose Bride thing. Anthe Himamea, or Himamea, however you pronounce it, I apologize, is this Rose Bride. We don't know entirely what that means yet. But whoever is the current champion of duels, as fucked up as it sounds, as it's worded, basically owns her. And she sees them as a kind of master to her, which is, again, really fucked up, and I really hope that they address that in the future of the series, and that Utena ends up freeing her from that, because just that is bothersome, especially with the fact that she's a person of color. And I'm not 100% sure here. Yeah, male person. Give her a second here. I'm not 100% sure here, but from what I can tell, and I might be wrong about this, and I really apologize if I am, but Anthe seems like she might be of Indian descent, maybe, because she has the what looks like the jewel on her forehead. I don't remember what it's called, but that's a common thing in India, I believe. And again, if I'm wrong on anything, please feel free to call me out. Please feel free, because I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I say dumb shit. If I'm wrong about anything, but I believe that's the case. Just call me out if I'm wrong and correct me and whatnot. Um, but yeah, either way, she is definitely dark skinned, and it makes it really upsetting when people are talking about her basically serving them, and when she's talking about them being her master, and it's upsetting and everything. But we don't know the full details behind this yet, so I feel like we need to know more still. But through this episode, we just get introduced to the characters and the general plot, which is what I expected. And like I said, we see that Utena definitely is breaking out of these restrictive gender roles that, even in real life, are very often placed upon people. In fact, almost constantly. Like, her teacher tells her, like, oh, you can't wear that uniform. That's a boy's uniform. You're a girl. And she's like, there's no rules against this. I can wear this if I want. And after she walks away, the teacher's like, oh, she's going to be a handful this year again, isn't she? It's just like, really? You're making that big of a deal out of this? And the thing, again, people do that in real life. There are people who are just really that obsessed with that kind of shit in real life, and it's really fucked up, and it's really just gross. Uh, but again, you see, she plays on the basketball team, and like they even want to recruit her and stuff. Um, and she carries herself in more of a masculine fashion due to her dream of becoming a prince and everything. And I like that. I like that we have a main character here who just so unabashedly breaks gender roles and is beloved by the community for it, by the fans. Like, this is a really popular series. Like, this is really popular. It's up there with some of the greats of that time period and just of all time in anime. People really do love it that much. And for it to be so progressive and so gender non-conforming in its main character and just style in general, that that's awesome that it's this popular. Unfortunately, there's some people out there who will accept this kind of thing in animation and whatnot and not in real life. Those people piss me off like almost more than the people who are at least open about it and everything. Because it's like, it's so hypocritical. But there's a lot of, like I said in the reaction, a lot of like visual um kind of, what's the word? Why is my mind blanking on the word? My mind is completely blanking. I guess you could just say metaphors. That's not the word I was trying to think of at all, but a lot of like visual representation, I guess, of different things in the story. A lot of show don't tell, and that's another thing. Like a lot of people rant and ramble about with shows and games and whatnot. It's not as important to me, but it's still nice when a show does it and does it really well. And you definitely get a lot of that here. It's giving us this information without blatantly saying it. I mean, there's a couple things it has to say, of course, but the fact that it's giving us all this information just through the visuals, just through showing us, that's great, and it does a good job. And there's like a hair or something on my. It's been bothering me. I'll take care of it after the redirect. Um, but the characters are also really likable. Like you just like kind of grow attached to them really quickly. Utena is a really likable, um, just nice person, but she doesn't seem to like want to necessarily get involved unless something really big happens. Like um, when she sees Saionji slap Anthe at first, she doesn't get involved. She just stays back and kind of watches as the other guy comes in. But then later on, when something specifically happens to her friend, to someone she cares about, she goes on the aggressive path, you could say. When she finds out that that letter tacked to the board was her friend's, like even before that she was aggressively against that because it's fucked up. It is extremely fucked up to do that to someone. To post their love letter on the board for everybody to laugh at, that is so fucked up. So Utena was already aggressively against that. But then when she found out that it was her friends, she got angry and she went out and challenged Taeyeonji to a duel. And granted, it ended up being a lot more than she expected, but still. um, but yeah, it's really interesting so far. There definitely seems to be some kind of magic in this world as well, considering what we saw Sionji do by pulling the sword out of Anthony's tits, which was like, okay, that's a visual choice. Um, and I'm wondering exactly how much that's going to affect things going forward. The opening doesn't really give a lot to work with because a lot of that might be just metaphorical and everything. Like at one point, they're riding horses, galloping through the sky and whatnot, and it's like that could very much just be a metaphor. But I don't know. That might literally happen at some point. But I like that. I like that I'm unsure about what this is going to do. That I'm unsure what is metaphor and what is not. Because it's gonna make me anticipate what's to come. It does make me anticipate what's to come. So all in all, I think this was a very successful, very enjoyable, and just genuinely good first episode. It's a series I've wanted to check out for a long time, and now that I've finally started to do so, yeah, this is definitely being added to the list. I don't know how quickly we'll be able to get to it because there's a lot of other shows uh like before it and everything. And on top of that, there's a lot of like currently airing stuff still at the moment and more coming within these within this month and next month. So it's like, oh geez. Oh geez. So it's like I don't know when we'll be able to get to it, but we'll get to it as soon as we can, for sure. Because I definitely want to see more of Revolutionary Girl Utena. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this first episode? And if you've seen the series, what do you think of it as a whole? Just don't spoil me on anything. No spoilers, please. I definitely want to remain spoiler free on this. Like this series has me peak interested. So I definitely want to remain spoiler free on what's going to happen. But tell me just your general thoughts on what you think of Revolutionary Girl Utena or Utena. Again, I might switch between those randomly at a point or two. Tell me your thoughts. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to this sooner rather than later. And hopefully I enjoy the rest of the series. There's like 39 episodes, I believe, from what I saw when I was getting this one. Um, which is a really odd number, but I think it's around the same number of episodes as Death Note. So it's not too bad. But we'll have to see how that goes when we get to it and everything. Um, either way, either way, tell me in the comments below, like I said, what you thought, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.